Welcome back to the class, everyone. As all of us know, Zetas are one of the most important resources in the entire game. They not only unlock new abilities that elevate a character to a higher level, but they can change the tide of entire battles. So what I want to do today is take a look at not only the economy changes that have kind of happened behind the scenes in regard to Zetas, but also what are some teams we can specifically be working on that are not only good, but require less Zetas and will allow us to catch up. So really, this video is going to be in two parts. We're going to address the economy changes because I kind of want to convince you all, if you're not already convinced, that we need to become even wiser than we have been with our Zetas before, because there are changes that are happening now, both for some people and as well as for everyone, that should be changing our mindsets a little bit here. So we'll start off first with the one that's affecting everyone. So for the longest time, after maybe about a year ago or so, Zetas were coming in at such a high rate, and the characters that we were getting at the time didn't need that many. We were actually able to catch up, and pretty much as soon as you were able to gear or relic a character, you were able to give them all the Zetas, whether they were good or bad, and that was fine. This is changing. This has been changing for quite a while now. For whatever reason, CG has decided that most marquee characters need 2 Zetas. This is different than it used to be. Like, we have Scout Trooper here at the bottom, who is a marquee character who's going to help a bunch of Imperial Trooper teams, and that's great, but this is very different than the previous standard. Like, when we got Range Trooper years ago, had a very similar functionality of coming and reinforcing the Troopers team, needed 0 Zetas, and most marquees, for the most part, they only needed about 1 Zeta to lift their team up. Like, Cal Kestis is a good character. I'm not trying to hate on him, but a character of his caliber, without a leadership, just kind of as a support sitting on the side, kind of like Hux would be to SLKR, they wouldn't have required 2 Zetas. So for whatever reason, they're trying to kind of front load these. So I think we do need to be intentional with where we're applying our Zetas, because if you haven't felt the crunch yet, there's a likelihood that you will. I'm feeling it right now for myself. And this one doesn't apply to everyone, but the Lightspeed bundles have put a lot of people, specifically the people that have gone after them, at a huge Zeta deficit, because they allowed people to unlock characters at a wildly faster rate than normal without actually giving them the Zetas for Ray, SLKR, Starkiller, or their requirements. So again, kind of the purpose of this video is to show off several teams out there that can function off of low Zetas that you can use as a break while you're on one of your bigger farms, or in between farms rather, to help you kind of catch up, get a good team going without having to constantly feel behind, or maybe just feel less behind than you already do when it comes to Zetas. So first off, this is not a list of just good teams. CLS is a perfect example of this. CLS needs a ton of Zetas. The team has 9. You don't need all those to function, but at the same time, you need most of them. So he's a great example of one of the teams that you finish and you're like, gosh, I need a break. Let me catch up on my Zetas. Let me go after one of these other teams. So that's kind of the place that all of these have. And the criteria for this is 3 Zetas or less to be functional. So that's, again, we didn't just pick these teams at random. That's kind of the magic number, is 3. So the first team that I want to call attention to that functions very well with low Zetas is the new and improved Phoenix team with Captain Rex. I love the team. It's accessible in a variety of ways. Yes, Captain Rex is not accelerated, yes, and he requires Kairos, but for the majority of the part, the other 4 characters have just been kind of sitting there for the longest time. We all had to use them to unlock Thrawn at one point, and now that Gear 12 is more accessible, most people can get them at least there. The Zetas you do need, and I guess we're going to call a lot of attention to this, is the Lost Commander. This is really how the whole team functions. They get a bunch of extra speed, and whenever they fall below certain thresholds, they recover thresholds, they gain defense and tenacity up, and whenever an ally is inflicted with a debuff, he gains 5% turn meter. This is very nice, especially because this whole ability is unique, and all of these bonuses are shared with the entire team. So you really need this one to get things going, but that's really all you need to have the Phoenix work at their fullest. I do really enjoy Sabine's Demolish Zeta that gives a bunch of nice boosts, specifically as an attacker. That's very nice for the whole team. And then Kanan's as well. I would actually put Kanan's in second place for the AoE dispel he has. Yes, Krex within himself has a dispel, but it's not as universal, and the turn meter gains on this are really nice for the whole team and can get you out of a sticky situation if you don't have the Omicron or you're not in GAC for Krex and you need a way to shake off all of the days that got put out on the entire team. So overall, Phoenix fantastic team. They work very well with few Zetas. Ultimately, you only need Rex, and Kanan and Sabine are nice additions. Not to say that Harris is bad, but it's more on the luxury level. Next up are going to be Imperial Troopers. I have talked very well about this team for the longest time, and the fact of the matter is, they don't need that many Zetas to be functional. The two that you must have to beat 90% of the teams that they can even beat in the first place are Veer's Aggressive Technician. That is what is going to constantly allow for the turn meter gains whenever you're getting kills to be able to help loop things over. And in addition to that, Piet's Emperor's Trap. In fact, Emperor's Trap is the most important. If you can only afford one of the team, similar to the Krex team, this is the one that you want to put on that's going to matter more than anything else, because this is where a lot of the turn meter that is going to be coming from Veer's lead, which is an Omega, by the way. It's not a Zeta. I know there's a lot of confusion surrounding that. But every single time you get that 10% turn meter from Emperor's Trap, from Piet, and everyone taking turns, you're going to generate a ton of turn meter. And that's what allows you to kill anything that you can essentially go in front of. There are some other Zetas here that are nice. Dark Troopers, it's quite frankly luxury. If you're strapped for Zetas, I would not recommend it. It's just, it's good. It doesn't make the character worse, but it doesn't really change any of the counters. It's very niche. Gideons actually do like this quite a bit if you're wanting to put a third Zeta on the team. This gives some nice boost. The offense up. Protection up allows him to be used in a Padme team, but we're kind of talking about Imperial Troopers right now. Taunt is also nice, so Gideon definitely takes third place here. Piet's second Zeta actually probably takes fourth place before Dark Troopers, just because it adds some nice features here where he inflicts daze, as well as if this kills an enemy, they get fear, which that's pretty situational, but it's fun when it happens. So overall, the team only really needs 1 to 2 Zetas to be able to do everything that it needs to do, and the others can add value, but they're ultimately not all that great. Next up is going to be the Adrad team, and ultimately, the only ones that you really need here are Adrad himself and maybe Jins. So the two most important ones, and we'll probably put this in the right order here, is Transmission from Scarif, and this is so simple, but is so pivotal to getting this team off the ground and for it to beat the majority of things that it beats. While Admiral Raddus is alive, Jyn Erso can't be defeated. The reason why this is important is because a lot of the times when you're using Adrad on offense, the AI doesn't understand that you need to kill Adrad first, and they will just sit there and they will wail and wail and wail on Jyn Erso for turn after turn after turn, and eventually that will buy Adrad himself enough time to be able to get off his special ability Hope, which just levels the enemy team. So you have to have the Zeta if you want to get the team to function. That is the most important. Inspire Remover is also very good. This is how the entire team is going to get Spark of the Rebellion, assuming you're not in JC or you don't have the Omicron. Jyn Zeta is also pretty good. I've never really seen it do anything that pivotal, but the fact that she is immune to buff immunity, or actually Rogue One allies are immune to buff immunity, and Jyn is immune to stun, does help a little bit against Grievous teams if you're trying to take that out on offense. It's a bit of a weird counter. There's better options, but it does open that up. So those are the 3 that you would want in that order. K2SOs, it's very similar to Dark Troopers. It's not bad. It doesn't change that much. He gains 1% max protection whenever he takes damage. So by the end of the fight, he might have 26 extra max protection. That's really not much. And I'm pretty sure, castings is terrible. We won't even look at it. It's like protection up, which is an extra leg up for a Bad Batch, and pretty much nothing else because it can be dispelled, and Biston doesn't have any. Next up is going to be the Genoans. Now, this team is a little bit dated, but it's been a useful team for a lot of people out there, and if you're kind of scoffing at the fact of having to get Watt for your guilds, they are a pretty decent team in the mid game, and on top of that, they have the value of getting Watt, who's needed for JMK, and also just a really good character. I do want to call this out. It's very different from most teams. The leadership is not the good Zeta. It's not completely terrible, but it actually, I would claim that it's anti-synergistic to the team, because it gets value off of when the enemies are buffed, and you really don't want them to be buffed, and you actually have the capability to keep them without buffs. The real Zeta that you do want is at the start of the encounter, summon a Geonosian Brute who taunts for 1 turn. Like, that is by far the biggest one. This means not only do you start with a pre-taunt, which I guess is pretty cool, but on top of that, you don't have to burn conscription, I guess is what that's called. Weird name, but I guess the character's made up. You don't have to burn this immediately right off the bat to get your extra Geonosian out there. You can specifically save this to be your cleanse, which it should be for all the debuffs that you're going to get throughout the battle. So not only, again, do you open up with the pre-taunt, you get the more stats on the field because of the Brute, But on top of that, you get to save the cleanse for when it should actually be a cleanse. Next up is going to be the Idan Versio team, and while this team does primarily shine in JC, it can be used in other game modes. I particularly do like it in Conquest as well. Idan being able to go immediately at the beginning of the battle with the debuff discs that are going around right now and have been there for a while, does get to snipe out quite a few characters and can immediately take control of the battle. Now, the team itself only really needs one Zeta, and that is going to be Idan's unique. And of course, it has all the conditions that really her whole kit does, where they can't have a leader or any non-droid Imperial Trooper allies. But basically what it is she is revived with 100% health and protection if there's another active Imperial Trooper ally. This is great because she is a good damage dealer. You don't really want her to die. She's also really the one who's getting everything going through both of her specials, but she does do a lot of good damage on top of that. So you want to have that Zeta in place, particularly yes in 5s, but also in 3v3 it's very helpful, because if you can get it down to where it's just her and Stormtrooper is so stinking hard to kill, almost really regardless of how he's set up, just because of his unique and his defensive stats. So you can't just kill Idan Versio, get rid of her cleanse, get rid of her healing or whatever she does, and then go after Storm. You have to kill Storm first, and you have to deal with Idan that entire time. So as long as you have that Zeta, the team is pretty good to go for the most part. The other thing that I want to mention is that the troopers just do not need theirs. I don't know if this is just kind of an anomaly in the system or if CG did this intentionally, but their Zetas are either terrible or they don't have them. Like if we look at Death Troopers, it's actually not terrible, but it's specifically to go with Krennic, and if Krennic is on the team, and he can't be, by the way, then you don't get any of this. Like, there's no point in putting that on at all. While the Stormtroopers, also not really that great. Like, they get protection up for 1 turn, and that's only the Remnant allies to begin with, and the offense within itself is kind of a joke, because that does not stack with revives. I get this question a lot, where he gains 40% offense for each defeated Empire ally. That is only for the ones that are dead. If they have been revived by Idan's special ability or the buff that gets put on them, that does not count. They actually have to be missing from the battle at the time for him to be able to gain that bonus offense. And Scout Trooper Zetas aren't bad, but they're specifically pigeonholed to Imperial Remnant leaders, of which Idan Versio is not. So you don't, none of these do anything for the team other than Idan. So you apply the one, you get the troopers going, and bam, you have the whole team ready to go with very little investment, at least as far as Zetas goes. And now last, and I guess least, are going to be SWGOH and Wampa. And I wanted to add them to this list, not to be used on a team together. You would want to use them separately as solo artists. But in essence, they are teams that can function off of 1 or 2 Zetas. That is worth mentioning. Although, also worth mentioning, you do need an Omicron on them to get them to work pretty much at all. So yes, while you get the budget value of not having to gear, relic, and Zeta up the character, you do have to put in a higher form of a resource. But I realize for everyone, the game can be different, or resource management can be different. So you might be really short on Zetas, and there are going to be players who are short on Zetas who also have a lot of Omicrons. And honestly, these 2 characters are just great for JC in general. You do want to have them, whether you're using SWGOH on another team with Treya like myself, or using to solo CLS in 3v3. He does have great value, as well as Wampa, and they're both low on Zeta. So that is going to be the video for today. Just kind of a PSA for the fact that the Zeta crunch is only going to get worse, which I guess I don't really love to deliver that news. But then on top of that, there are some teams out there that, between your bigger farms of really heavy Zeta teams like CLS or Inquisitors, we can take a pit stop at, say, Adrad when you're going after Profundity, or Genoas when you're going after Watt, or Phoenix just for the heck of it, and you can get a lot of value that way. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time, stay awesome.